I'm going to be recycling a talk that I recently did for the amazing Czech Dreaming Conference, which happens yearly in Prague. It's amazing. You should all go next year for sure. Definitely put yourselves forward to speak. It's a brilliant place. So yeah, I'm recycling that one for you here because it's also an excellent talk. I hope. Oh yeah, that's me. This is more about me. I'm these things, one of these things. I'm also London's Calling organiser. Who went to London's Calling last week? Come on! Who didn't go? Do you know who? Does anybody here not know what London's Calling is? London's Calling. Okay, so London's Calling is a yearly event. It's Europe's largest community-led Salesforce event. It's basically like this, but times 1,000. And we have tracks for admins, marketers, people interested in industries, architect. What did I say? Developers. Us too. Yeah, it's an amazing day. We had 56 sessions. We had Mark Watson, the comedian, do our headline act. We had an after party. We fed everybody. We danced. And Prabhu and I, what time did we go to bed, dude?
Not sure.
It was nearly 8 o'clock in the morning when we finished up. Yeah. And then I had to go to a family picnic. Woo! It was hard. But anyway, that's London's Calling. You should all check it out. I'm also a Salesforce MVP and founder of something called Shirtforce, which you may see T-shirts. There's a few other Shirtforces in the audience. Oliver has one on, the Metalorian. Oh, and so does Matt as well. And we've got a DevOps and an FS. We have a handful of us here, which is brilliant. If you don't know about Shirtforce, basically we have hopefully funny T-shirts for people in the Salesforce and tech world. And profits, 100% profits, I should say, from every sale go to charity, and the charities are chosen by the community too. Yes, Rob?
And at London's Calling, there is a competition to have the best photo of yourself or your friends wearing a Shirtforce T-shirt, and there are prizes.
Oh, yeah. Very good point, Rob. It's actually the London World Tour. If you take a photo of yourself in a Shirtforce T-shirt that day, you get entered into a raffle to win another Shirtforce T-shirt. And you can't have too many Shirtforce T-shirts.
We're really going to be dictating what people wear, aren't we?
We really are, yeah. And also...
I've been told that even though I'm not coming, I can still take a picture with all my,
You can do. You can't do that when it comes to the London's Calling T-shirts. Anyway, I'm going to talk to you about Apex data transforms with DataWeave.
Why? I was enjoying the talk about you.
Oh, sorry. So this is me. And... so DataWeave, we're going to talk about what it is, why we might want to use it when we should. We're going to have a brief introduction to some tooling. This is a getting started thing, so we're not going to go right down into the weeds. And there's several reasons for that. We will look at some examples, though. There will be code, which everyone loves. We're going to talk about some of the benefits and some of the limitations of it. We'll talk a bit about the future. But what is it? DataWeave. Well, it's a data transformation framework that comes from the Mulesoft world. It's a functional language, I guess, the way the scripting is done. So if you've done any LWC, like Oliver clearly has, with JavaScript and TypeScript, you'll be used to the idea of a functional kind of approach to programming, which is nice about a new offering from Salesforce in terms of what we have as developers, is it should be packageable by default when it goes GA. When it goes GA. It's in beta. I thought it was going to go GA in summer. It's not. Hopefully it's going to be GA in winter. The data when. So why we want to have a data transformation framework? Well, it's going to greatly reduce the amount of Apex code we need to write to do some of the complex transformations. My notes are over on my slide over there, and I haven't got my glasses on, so I can't read what it says anyway, but we'll do our best. It's not going to be useful if you're just doing simple data transforms, but when you start doing more complex things, so if you've ever tried to output XML, and it's a bit narky, this is really going to make things much, much simpler for you. And when it comes to numbers of records, oh, cheers, Trooper.
I mean,
it says... It says less errors. It says less errors. Cheers. So I could have, I mean, really, the reduced amount of code, right? I mean, I probably have a 10% error entry in my code entry. This is going to reduce that amount of code I have to write, which means reduce the amount of errors I will write also. And it also comes with a whole load of built-in functions, which means I don't have to write things that are mundane over and over again, and that can be difficult. I said it's highly scalable. Yes, if you're processing lots of records, you won't have an incremental amount of time, CPU time, to process 10,000 records like you would potentially in something like if you're just doing it straight in Apex. Oh yeah, and of course, because it comes from the Mulesoft world, you'll be giving yourself Mulesoft experience, which means you can branch out into other kind of areas, I guess, which is good in a kind of world where you don't know where your job's going to be.
Job security.
Yeah. So let's dive straight in. This is a DataWeave script. Isn't it gorgeous? Woo. It's broken down into a few parts. Every script starts with a line up here, which is that percentage DW, and then you have an API version. I think for DataWeave and Apex, it's always 2.0 at the moment. DataWeave is beyond that, but I think this is where we are. And we then have this separator. See this, like 3 hyphens, is it? Something like that, on line 3. Everything above that, apart from line 1, is where we're going to define our inputs and our outputs to the data transform. So the records coming in, records going out. We can also define up there some variables. They could be functions. They could be variables as in how we might refer to them, like strings, integers, that kind of thing as well. We then have this separator, and everything below that is going to be what essentially is going to make up our transform, the data that's going to go out. In this situation here, I've just got an array of 2 objects with a name and a city attribute, and I've got 2 records in there. Czech Dreaming in Prague, woo! London Schooling in London, which is nice. What I want then in this script here, I want to output into CSV form. So I've got kind of like a JSON object coming in. The output will look like this, right? I don't have to do anything fancy. This is just giving me this. So this script is going to say, right, JSON input, output's going to be CSV. It's going to throw this out here, and you can see on the first line, it's taken the attribute names as the first line of the CSV, which is what we'd expect, I think. Any questions so far? No, excellent, good. So let's go a bit further. This is a slightly deeper script in here. Above the line now, in lines 2 to 5, we've defined a variable called data. This is going to pretend to be our input data, I guess, which is a JSON array again. The output this time is going to be JSON as well, but our transform, which has happened in lines 8 to 11, we're going to have 2 attributes in there. Names, which is going to be everything in the data.name value, and then cities again. So this is actually going to give us something slightly different. It's going to take every value within our records input and then push them through into separate arrays, one in names and one in cities. And it looks a bit like this.
Magic.
I know. Which is a bit funky, right? I mean, you haven't, there's hardly anything in here, and it's magically exploded this out for us and given us these values. And there's all sorts of stuff you can do in here. So this is JSON to JSON, showing you how you can do a transform in there. Did I write any notes? No. I've got 2 empty bullet points in my notes slide. Who knows what I was thinking? Why do 2? I mean, 1 I can understand. But
Why did you remember you have notes? That's the question.
well, I got here and I thought, there must be something more to say about this. But no. Oh, no, there's lots of notes on this one. Here we go. This is the DataWeave Playground. It's a website you can get to. This is its kind of UI. And it's broken down into 3 parts. You can see on the left, we've got our input area, where you define your payload. There we've got JSON. In the middle section, we've got our script, our DataWeave script. And you can define, this is basically what we just saw a moment ago. And then on your right-hand side, we have what's going to come out in the output. So this is quite funky. So we can go over here and we can see our payload JSON's coming in. The payload on line 4 in the middle is just saying, don't do anything. We just got our payload, and we're going to chunk it straight out. So we've got JSON coming in, JSON going out, and the transformation isn't happening at all. What if we change, though, the input to something like CSV, and then we output again, without doing any transforms, but still to JSON format. You can see here now we've got CSV coming in, the CSV is coming out, and you notice here our attribute names are taken from the first line of the CSV, right? Which is quite cool. We can change the output format as well to YAML. Who's used YAML in the last 6 months? Slack development, maybe, possibly. Let's try XML. No, XML won't work because you can't take this and throw it out into XML format. We need to manipulate it slightly to make this work now. There's another screen here, Louise. You like my profile. I can tell you like my profile. My timing's going to be off now, my video. But let's see, right. So what we want to do in our XML, let's pretend we want to put everything into this conferences element and then have our payload. We can do that if we reference one record of the payload in this instance, because the payload is an array coming from our CSV input. And it's spat us out here. So we've got this conf thing, which has come from the name in line 4. And then the attributes is spat out, or the elements is spat out. The F name and the L name have come from the first line on the CSV again, which is really neat, I think. We've not done anything special, and that's fine if that's how you want it to look. But let's say we want to put each conference into the confs and output them. Well, we can do that again, and now it's nested, and it understands the payload was an array. We don't have to think about that at all. It's done that for us. And now we have an output which looks, I mean, I wouldn't want to do that in Apex at all, ever. But it's done it for us very, very simply. And you can see here, without any real problems. What we could do, though, what do I say on my slides? Oh, we're going to use some built-in functions. Right, so now what we want to do is we want to actually do a transform. So not just one type of input to the other. We want to make some changes here. And we can use built-in map functions. So we're going to put our payload through a map. So this is taking every record within the array, and we're going to do something to it. In this case, what we can then do is we can define the attribute names, or the element names within our JSON, within our XML, sorry. So we're going to call them capital F, capital N. So for F name, I don't know why XML loves uppercase. Does it? For some reason, it does. And we're going to output them like this. Todd's done a typo. It's c.l name. There we go. You got it. And so our XML output has now changed to map the element names we want. And again, we've written 9 lines, and like 3 of those were nothing. This is brilliant, right? This is very cool. And as well as these kind of functions that can deal with manipulating things through arrays, there's maps, there's filters, there's all these type of stuff that you might be used to with JavaScript and TypeScript. We can also, let's say we want uppercase the last name. So we can use a built-in function called upper, slam it in, and that's done this for us as well. Like I said, very simple for us to be looking at. And with the way that we've been working with Lightning Web Components and even Aura, this type of structure of the language should become more and more familiar to us as Salesforce developers as well. Yeah, so that's pretty neat, right? Isn't it? Do you think it's neat? Mm-hmm. I think it's really neat. And so the DataWeave playground is awesome. It's just up there. Go and have a play with it. Yeah, very cool to get started. You don't even have to go onto the World Wide Web either. You can do it within your VS Code, which is nice. I've got a dark scheme on here. Rob, what's the theme? Cody's in bed by 10?
Cody's in bed by midnight,
yeah. But there's a DataWeave extension for VS Code as well, so you can install that. I've installed it here. As with all good things, it comes with its command palette instructions. So let's say we want to create a new mapping now within VS Code, just to get started. Open up a command palette, DataWeave, create new mapping. I mean, it's not exactly cryptic. And let's rename ours to Check Dreaming, because I did this talk for Check Dreaming, which is an awesome conference you should all attend. And so let's done this. And so straight away, it's given us a bit of boilerplate script. Cheers. And we've got the output as well, telling us what's happening here. In this case, the payload is just, again, lines 4 to 7 over there. It's just hello world in JSON. It spat it out over here, which is nice and straightforward. I think I was just saying you can do preview output. I've written lots of notes on this screen. What do I write? Preview output. Oh, so we can define input variables. I should have Control++. Let's define some input variables now to show you how this starts to work with our world of Apex, really. So up here, we'll put on line 2, we're going to say, right, we're going to have an input variable called input CSV. So we're going to have an of application type /CSV, and then we're going to remove that boilerplate piece and put input CSV in there, because that's the thing that's going to go through our transform. That's the value of the records. It's currently throwing us an error, and that's because input CSV doesn't exist anywhere else. It's just a name of a variable I've given it. The DataWeave extension for VS Code allows us to define sample data as well by this little define sample data button. We've done that. It's automatically created as a CSV file, which is handy. It knew that from the input line that we had, and it's thrown in something here called DataWeave. You can see it's in our Explorer down there. There's a samples directory now, and it's thrown it in there, and it's called it Check Dreaming as well, which is handy. But let's replace that with our London's calling, conferences, I should say, sample CSV. Todd, can you do that? Replace that for me? I gave myself some drinking time as well there. What was I doing when I recorded this? Oh, what was I doing? And here we go. So now we have our CSV defined. Our JSON now looks exactly as we want it to, which is brilliant news. And yeah, we've got our input, we've got our script, and our output previewed all in VS Code. So if you're kind of tinkering away, this is brilliant. I mean, rather than doing all this stuff, I've got to deploy. Right, deploy, Salesforce, what's going to happen? Don't know. Here, you're kind of getting some instant feedback as to all your mistakes. Even if we had a third conference, Dream LA, which Louise has probably gone to.
This year, yeah.
Did go, yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, brilliant. Dream LA should go there too. If we click back into the script, it appears in our output as well, which is all very cool. So nice and interactive for playing around. And you could do the same things with the upper command and the maps and everything. But if we put in output application Apex, we bomb out, which is probably not massively surprising to see, but we've got some unknown content type in there, which is sad, because I thought we were getting close to DataWeave and Apex. Yes, I did say something about Apex. We will get there. We spent, I don't know, what's my timer say?
You have time.
Is it really that long? Or was
18 minutes.
Woo! Okay, we have to crack on. I said something about Apex. Yes, we're going to get there. So let's have a look at what things might begin to look like in Apex. Here's a DataWeave script now that's taking Salesforce records through a map. So our input is CSV, but we're going to output it into Salesforce records. In fact, the contact object records. So our records is coming from the CSV, and then we're going to put it into these lovely things that we all know and love, right? And we're going to chuck it out as an object of type, or class, sorry, contact. That looks good. We're getting there. Here's our input and our output, CSV in, Apex out, and then our lovely little map. Not complicated, but it should be quite powerful. And then I have a little bit of anonymous Apex here. Please don't slaughter me for this, Rob, or anyone else, who cares. But we're going to define a couple of strings. One's going to be, oh, I've got a DataWeave script. It's called CSV to contacts. That lives in my metadata. Brilliant. And I then got an inline, another string, which is just a CSV with there's like a new line return there. So that's a CSV. I just want to, couldn't be bothered with everything else. The first line of the CSV is fname, lname, email, and it's going to have value of Cody, the bear, and Cody at Salesforce. That's going to be an input record that's going to basically simulate our CSV. Then we get on to DataWeave and Apex. Woo! 22 minutes in. And first thing we'll do is use a DataWeave namespace to create a script based upon our DataWeave mapping script that we created. We're then going to execute it. Whoa, it's getting exciting now. And the input to that execute is going to be a map of things, which is essentially what we're going to be inputting to it. It might take other things. I haven't got that far yet in my DataWeave training, but it's at least going to take inputs. And one of the things is going to be records, and that's coming from our CSV. The records we had, if you remember in our DataWeave script, that was the thing we were mapping through. So that records comes from here, and that's going to be coming from the CSV line. And then we're going to get the result of that, and we're going to put it out on a system.debug. Are you ready? Back to VS Code. Dun, 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 dun. We're going to run this anonymous Apex. That's the same anonymous Apex we saw earlier. We're running it now. I've got time for a drink. I definitely have. Because we start hitting one of the limits at the moment with DataWeave, which is it takes a bit of time. Oh, here we go. No, we're out. Here's our log output, and there's our debug line. Right, this is all live. Not smoke and mirrors really happened. There's Cody the bear at Salesforce. That was our contact object that was created, and all looks good, apart from the thing we just noted, which is it took 15 seconds, right, to do one record, which is like the tiniest thing in the world. That's currently a problem, but it worked, and we had hardly any lines of code, which is good. So let's get a yes.
So did you try to like load 1 million records or something like that?
I didn't.
It's haven't finished yet.
I didn't. Other people did, and I'll talk to you about that in a minute. So let's go a bit deeper in this, right? Because we had a very basic example, and now Matt's told me to look this way. We've got our account object, and then we've got a custom object called invoices. And what we really want is a beautiful XML report that is invoices and our account, and then it's invoices. Awful, really. But some interesting things about our XML is we want to have an inner attribute, which is going to be our Salesforce ID in there, right? That's what the report wants. It wants its external ID, which is our Salesforce ID with a name in it. The same with our invoice. The invoice date XML element wants to be in a particular format. Cool, it's going to be, 2-digit date, abbreviated month, 2-digit year? Something like that. And also we want to make sure that there's a mandatory value in the payment terms, which means if our record doesn't have that, which it might not, it's optional. In our case, there's going to be defaulted to a value of 30. It's in 30 days. This is what it looks like. So we've got a Salesforce account. There's a couple of invoices. I've not made anywhere near that much money for charity. Oh, no, I have. I've made way more than that. We've made 10 times that amount. Brilliant. But you can see one of them hasn't got payment terms, and there's invoice dates and all that kind of carry on. So we've created a simple Apex web service now. It's just a get. We're going to get our invoices and get our account. We've got our DataWeave script that I just showed you, which is called invoice to XML. And again, we're going to use this DataWeave namespace command to create it. We're then going to execute it. And this time, we're passing in 2 values into our map. We've got our invoices and we've got our account. Really just showing you can pass 2 things in. I don't know, really. But that's what we're doing. And then we're going to send back the response to our web service call, which is going to be the result of that. Again, this is the format we wanted. We wanted our inner attribute to be inside of XML. We wanted to have an array of invoices. We want to have the same for invoice with an inner attribute. We want a particular format for our date, and we want some default values to be entered into XML as well. And so this is our DataWeave script, which is, I think, it's quite simple, really. There's probably 10 lines of useful stuff in here. At the beginning, we've got an input and output. We're defining a variable up here, again, above those hyphens, which is our default payment terms. You probably want to take something like that from the system rather than hard-coding into a variable in a script, but you could be defining something else, I guess. Line 6 here is showing you how you can create that inner attribute. So we've got the @ symbol with ID, and that's going to come from the account's ID. And the same thing is happening down in the invoice number as well. Oh, I haven't highlighted that one. Good job I didn't say that. And then we're looping through our invoices. And for each of those, we're going to create our invoice. Here's a little bit of code that shows you how you can do the date formatting, which is, I mean, I didn't read into all the documentation, but this worked absolutely as I wanted it to. So I was like, cool, never mind, we won't go any further. There are loads of formats you could take in here. This one just happened to be the one I wanted. But I don't have to muck about with it, right, which is nice. It's just there. And the payment terms, where I want that mandatory value to be 30 if it's not available in my record, I'm just defining it here like a default payment terms. Does that? Yes.
So that script, where does that exist?
Yes.
Where does it? Oh, so this is.
So,
Where does it live?
yeah.
Where
So
do you keep it?
Oh, it's.
you said metadata.
Yeah, it's metadata. So it's pushed in my, it's in my, so if you in the DX world, and you've got your force main default and all that sort of stuff, there's a DW/DW folder created by default, and it lives in there as metadata. There's an XML file.
So can you see this inside yourself?
Yes, you can, yeah.
As it inside the metadata object or inside?
You can see it. Wait, I don't know. I only ever looked at it through VS Code. I am guessing it's in the D. You can look at it. You can open it, I guess, through the developer console, maybe.
I'm thinking from an admin point.
Oh yes, yeah. It'll be part of the metadata. Yeah.
And is it in the metadata API, and can you deploy it?
Yes. Yes, I believe you can because it's existing in the DX world. So yes, I think you can. Don't hold me to that. Don't hold me to that. But I think you can. I think it exists.
From the first time you heard it was packageable, right?
Yeah, so I think it must be. Whether it's 1GP packageable, I don't know. Definitely 2GP packageable. Will be, definitely. Live demos? Gee, just shush. Who's this? Right, come on. Enough of these nonsense questions. Let's get back to some recordings. This is Postman, where I'm going to be calling. I'm calling this REST service I created with an account. I've got time for another beer. But it spat me out something which looks nice. It looks like the XML I wanted, which is good. Postman's got really cool tools to format these things and prettify them for me as well. Todd, could you zoom in, please? Can't see at the back. Zoom in. Yay! Okay. So we've got our in attribute ID within our account name element, which is cool. There's our Salesforce ID, which is good. So yeah, scroll up, please. I don't think you will. We've got our date formatted nicely, which is good. I hate dates. There's our first invoice with the 90 days, and this is our second invoice with the default 30 days populated as well, which is good. Proved all of that worked, which is excellent. Yeah, the great thing about this, how fast did it run? Oh, no, it was awful. 13 seconds. Not ideal. Not ideal. 13 seconds. Quicker than the 15 through the anonymous Apex. So I should say, when I tried to record this, I probably did about 8 before I had one that was like actually returned or returned in a decent time. Your mileage may vary at the moment. Yes?
Does it count as a CPU time? Because like you will be subject to the CPU time error.
Yeah, I hit that many times. Yeah.
With this, yeah?
Yeah. That's
my first thought was actually it should save or it should improve the performance. Is the only...
Yeah,
At one time in the future it might.
it definitely, thing is, it definitely will. It definitely will. So let's talk about the limitation now while we're here. So currently what happens is the DataWeave runs up in an instance, like a virtual instance, runs up. That instantiation is taking all that time. The processing the records is...
So it's actually not part of Apex on the platform itself? It's like...
No, yeah, it gets farmed off, and a machine gets spun up, and it runs in there. And that's where it's quite funny. So if you run 100 records, you ran 100,000 records, the timing would be significantly, there'll be so minimal difference between them. I mean, when the first one takes 13 seconds, right, you'd hope it wouldn't take 5 hours. So yeah, it's really quick once it runs up. And in fact, if you have multiple transforms in the same transaction, the second one takes hardly any time at all. So you can kick off multiple. Once the machine's going, you can throw loads of stuff at it, and it runs blisteringly quick. It's really, really fast.
So you can spin up a machine at the beginning of your transaction.
You could I don't know if you could throw something off to, yeah, which is weird. But I mean, that's being addressed. So they are addressing it. They're definitely looking into it. I was told it'd be fixed by summer, and my experience was it got much worse in summer. But also they had a whole Salesforce release to deal with, so they probably weren't. Yeah, they weren't worrying about. They weren't worrying about me with my presentation based on beta functionality, right? They didn't care. There's no Excel type, which at the moment, which is, I don't know. But overall, I mean, the amount of Apex you need to write to do a transformation that can be really complex is decreased massively. It's also, I found it much easier to read, right? You have your transformation, your little piece over here, your script that does all that work. There's all the stuff that DataWeave brings to it, which is huge. There's so many built-in functions, so much functionality available to you. Keeping that all in a nice little pot, I think, is brilliant. The increased power you get from all of that, massively reduced complexity. Complexity. It's a new word. Complexity, and it's highly scalable. Like I said, once the machine runs up, it will turn through records like you wouldn't imagine. So where do we go from here? Well, hopefully it's going to be GA at some point. I really hope it does, because it should make a lot of lives much, much easier, and the performance they're going to address. But the next steps for everyone here, I definitely recommend going and checking out the DataWeave Playground. It's really cool. I mean, just as a website, playing around with it, it's very funky. And also you can do it in VS Code too. Here's some resources if you want to know about it. There's Apex documentation. There is a GitHub repo that has some really cool samples on there. Daniel Stange's Apex Hours videos, really good. He has a lot more time to talk about it. It goes into a lot more detail. He does go through the idea of doing 100 records and 1,000 records and carrying on. That's really, really good. Sorry?
Can you use it in batch classes?
Can you use it? I don't know. I can't see why not. Yeah.
Why wouldn't you use it in a queuable or a batch class or a schedule class?
It would depend on your use case, right? You wouldn't do that for a web service call, maybe, or something. But sorry?
It's asynchronous.
The DataWeave callouts are, yeah.
Yeah, because you have to call to the virtual container anyway, right?
Yeah. But it's, yeah.
The one use case can be that you have continuation methods, right? You have back-to-back web service calls. You have continuation methods that you can instantiate one time, and the other web service calls might take lesser time.
Yeah. You could be chunking things and offloading things, I guess. But cool. The cost is currently 0 for this. There is no. There's no mention of it being chargeable at all anywhere. If it's beta, you can use it in production, but you do so at your own risk. Yeah, I don't think you can package it now and put it into production. In fact, you probably could. Yes, Rob.
Is it callable out of JavaScript and LWCs, tying it into Ollie's stuff, or do you have to go via Apex to get to it?
I see.
Can you not go directly from JavaScript and just say call out to this thing and build it in there?
You probably could go straight to Mulesoft or something. I don't know, that route maybe would.
But
I mean,
out of curiosity,
It's not an
are they
executable, right?
using this as a way of getting to AI? So they can have a learning experience from other people and use us as a test subject, just out of curiosity. Because it's free, means something is coming after it.
I don't. They could be. I mean, the DataWeave in Mulesoft's been around for a long time. Right? It's a very mature product suite in itself. Yeah.
When it gets GA or such.
And so if it's now beta, so where you mentioned you're on training, so you're doing this training through those.
Oh, so you can train through the playground. You can do it. That's not beta. That's GA. The DataWeave itself is GA. Using it in Apex is in beta. But you could spin up a Scratch org or dev org and use it.
If anyone wants to actually have a real life scenario or something, it's not on Trailhead, right? So where can they just?
Oh, the documentation up here is all there. They'll show you how to do it all, and you could do it you could spin up a dev org now and use it. You could try it in your product, but it'd be at your own risk.
Beta, right? So it should be already available in all production orgs and sandboxes as well.
Yeah. I mean, I would do it in a Scratch, but go for prod. No. Yeah. I joke, but you're right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, if you've got a real project. Yeah. I mean.
Yeah, no, but I understand the difference between beta and the races.
But if you're watching the project, and the noise coming out of the chat group is that it's looking really mature and people are happy, and you think, well, maybe winter's going to go, then why not invest some time in it if it's going to have good benefits? Yeah.
But anyway, even for if you're just playing around with it and you need to help your team with some data manipulation, you can do it locally. You don't need to have it in production.
Yeah. If someone says, can you turn this CSV into JSON, you just throw it into the playground and you've got it out, right? I mean, there are probably loads of tools that could do it, but if you wanted to, I don't know how much you can throw into the playground.
Transpose data without a for loop,
Yeah, it's all there. It's brilliant. I mean, I think I'm really excited about it. But anyway, any further questions? In that case, don't run away. But yeah, thank you very much for listening to